Years old. 3 days ago, my mother called to tell me not to come to New Year's Eve. "You just make everyone uncomfortable," she said, her voice smooth and final, like she was declining a dinner reservation. So I spent December 31st alone in my Beacon Hill penthouse, standing at the window with a glass of wine, watching strangers celebrate in the streets below, while my family toasted champagne at their Cape Cod mansion without me. The fireworks over Boston Harbor were beautiful. I watched them alone. At exactly 12:01 in the morning, my phone rang. My sister Victoria. Her voice was shaking in a way I had never heard before. "Elena, what did you do? Dad is not breathing right. Mom is screaming. The whole family is panicking. What the hell did you do?" The news she was talking about, my company, Bloom Botanics, had just gone public at midnight with a valuation of $2.3 billion, making me one of the wealthiest self-made women in the beauty industry. But the money was not what made them panic. It was the Forbes interview that dropped at the exact same moment. 4 years of evidence, every email, every timestamp, every recording, and the truth about what my sister did to our grandmother. Victoria was still screaming through the phone, her composure shattered for the first time in my memory. She had always been the polished one, the poised one, the one who could walk into any room and make everyone believe she belonged there. But not tonight. Tonight her voice cracked and splintered like cheap glass. "You destroyed everything," she hissed. "The business, the family name. Everything Grandma built, you just burned it to the ground." I stood at my window, watching the last fireworks fade over the harbor, and I felt something I did not expect. Calm. Complete, bone-deep calm. "Everything Grandma built?" I said quietly. "You mean everything you stole from her?" The silence on the other end was deafening. Victoria had spent her entire life never being at a loss for words. She had built a career on charm, on spin, on making people believe whatever version of reality suited her best. But she had no spin for this. The timestamps were from her own email server. The security footage was from the hotel she managed. And Grandma's journal? That was her handwriting. Victoria knew it. I knew it. And now the whole world knew it. "These documents are fabricated," Victoria finally managed. "You forged them. You manipulated everything because you have always been jealous of me." I almost laughed. 4 years ago, that accusation would have wounded me. I had spent my entire life being told I was the jealous one, the difficult one, the one who could not just be happy for her sister's success. But I was not that woman anymore. "The patent filings are dated March 2022, I said. "Your trademark application came 3 months later. Every formula in V-Beauty traces back to research I conducted in my apartment, research you accessed when you borrowed my laptop while I was in the bathroom. And Grandma's journal documents every threat you made to her in her final months. Every single one, Victoria. In her own handwriting." Another silence. I could hear her breathing, ragged and uneven. "I will destroy you for this," she whispered. Her voice had dropped to something venomous, something that did not even pretend to be sisterly anymore. "Whatever you think you have accomplished tonight, I will take it all away. I have done it before. I will do it again." I thought about all the things she had taken from me, my formulas, my fiancé, my place in our family, my grandmother's final months. "You already tried," I said, 4 years ago. It did not work. I hung up before she could respond. For the first time in my life, I ended a conversation with my sister on my terms. I finished my wine and watched the city settle into the quiet after midnight. Somewhere across Massachusetts, my family was realizing that everything they had built on lies was about to collapse, and I felt nothing but peace. My phone would not stop buzzing. Within minutes of the Forbes article going live, I had 47 missed calls and over 200 text messages. My mother's messages escalated from demands to threats to something that sounded almost like grief, though I knew better than to believe it was grief for me. "How dare you?" she wrote. "You have destroyed this family. You are dead to us." My father sent only one message. "Elena, please," just those 2 words. No demands, no accusations, just please. His message was different from the others, and I noticed that, filed it away for later. Marcus, my former fiancé, the man who had left me for my sister 2 months before our wedding, sent a wall of text I did not bother to read. Something about how we needed to talk, how this affected all of us, how he had made mistakes. I deleted his message without finishing it. He had made his choice years ago. He did not get to unmake it now. I walked through my penthouse, this apartment I had bought with money I earned, in a building where no one knew or cared about the Hartwell name. Everything here was mine. The furniture I had chosen, the art on the walls, the view of the harbor. I stopped at my desk, where a framed photograph sat in the center. My grandmother Grace, taken in her greenhouse 2 months before she died. Her eyes were kind but knowing, the way they always were, like she could see through every mask people wore. I picked up the frame and held it for a long moment. "I kept my promise, Grandma," I whispered to the empty room. "The truth is out now. They cannot bury it anymore." I set the photograph down and opened my laptop. The Forbes article was already going viral. Comments poured in faster than I could read them. Finally, someone exposed these trust fund frauds. This is the revenge story of the decade. Elena Hartwell is my new hero. I watched the share count climb past 10,000, then 20,000, then 50,000. By morning, everyone would know. By Monday, investigators would start asking questions. By next month, Victoria's empire would be rubble. But the public only saw the surface, the IPO, the billions, the dramatic midnight reveal. They did not know what it cost to get here. They did not know about the years of being invisible, the theft of everything I had built, the sister who smiled at family dinners while systematically dismantling my life. They did not know about my grandmother, who saw me when no one else did, who prepared for this moment even as she lay dying. They did not know about the box Victoria thought she had buried forever. To understand what happened tonight, you need to understand the Hartwells, not the family everyone sees at charity galas and society weddings. The real family. The one that taught me love was conditional, and loyalty was just another word for control. The one where brilliance meant nothing if it did not photograph well. The one where I learned, long before I should have, that some people will take everything you have and convince the world you gave it willingly. Victoria thinks tonight destroyed her, but she does not understand yet. The Forbes article was just the beginning. What comes next? The investigations, the lawsuits, the truth about what she did to Grandma Grace in those final months. That is when she will realize I did not just expose her business. I exposed everything she is. And it all started with a box she thought she had buried forever. The Hartwells were not just wealthy. We were legacy. 4 generations of Cape Cod real estate, a luxury hospitality empire that stretched across New England, the kind of family whose name appeared on hospital wings and university buildings. Our mansion sat on a private stretch of coastline, 12 bedrooms, a private beach, gardens designed by a landscape architect my grandmother had imported from London. When I was a child, I thought everyone lived like this. By the time I was a teenager, I understood that almost no one did, and that my family would never let me forget the difference. Family gatherings at the Hartwell estate were performances. Everyone dressed perfectly, said the right things, smiled for photographs that would end up in society magazines. The crystal was always polished. The flowers were always fresh. The laughter was always just a little too loud, a little too practiced, never quite reaching anyone's eyes. My father, Richard, ran the company, Hartwell Hospitality Group, but my mother, Margaret, ran everything else. The social calendar, the family image, the invisible rules that determined who belonged and who did not. I learned early that in our family, belonging was not guaranteed. It was earned, revoked, and weaponized as needed. My sister Victoria earned her place before she could walk. She was 5 years older than me, and she was everything I was not. Harvard MBA, graduated with honors. Featured in Forbes 30 Under 30 for hospitality innovation. She married Marcus Morgan when she was 28, a banking heir whose family money matched ours. A wedding covered by Martha Stewart's magazine and attended by a senator. Victoria ran the hotel group's luxury spa division, the glamorous side of the business, the part that got her photographed at galas and quoted in lifestyle publications. Our mother introduced Victoria the same way every time, her voice warm with pride. "This is my daughter Victoria. She is brilliant. I was introduced differently. This is Elena. She is finding herself. Or worse, Elena does something with lotions." I had graduated from Northeastern with a chemistry degree, summa cum laude. I had published 2 research papers on botanical compounds. I had spent years developing formulations that could have changed the skincare industry. None of it mattered. Victoria got the corner office at Hartwell Hospitality. I got awkward silences when I mentioned my research. Victoria got our mother's jewelry, passed down in little ceremonies that felt like coronations. I got practical gifts, luggage, a slow cooker, things you give someone you expect to disappear. Every holiday, every family dinner, every phone call, the pattern repeated. Victoria's accomplishments were celebrated. Mine were dismissed. Victoria was the future of the company. I was the daughter who could not figure out her life. The message was constant and clear. Victoria was the heir. I was the spare. And spares, in families like ours, learned to make themselves small or learned to leave. But there was one person who saw me differently. My grandmother, Grace. She was 82 years old when I was in my mid-20s, the family matriarch who had built the original hotel empire with my grandfather before he died. Grace had sharp eyes, the same restless curiosity I recognized in myself, the same impatience with pretense. While family parties swirled inside the mansion, all air kisses and champagne and performances, Grace and I would slip away to her greenhouse. It sat at the edge of the property, glass panels catching the afternoon light, rows of lavender and chamomile and rosehip and calendula growing in perfect order. Grace knew every plant, every property, every remedy. "Your great-great-grandmother used these," she would tell me, her weathered hands moving gently among the leaves. Before there were fancy creams and expensive serums, there was this. She taught me to extract oils, to blend compounds, to understand the chemistry of nature. Those afternoons in the greenhouse were the only times I felt like I belonged to this family. Grace saw through Victoria in ways she never said directly, but I noticed. The way her smile tightened when Victoria interrupted. The way she kept certain recipes only in her private journal, never sharing them with Victoria's spa division despite my sister's repeated requests. Once, when we were alone among the lavender, Grace took my hand and whispered something I did not understand until years later. "Your sister takes what she wants. Remember that." I nodded, not knowing what she meant, not knowing I would someday wish I had listened more carefully. 3 months before she died, Grace held my hands in the greenhouse one last time. She was weaker by then, her voice softer, but her eyes were still sharp. "I am leaving you something important," she said. "A box. Do not let anyone take it from you." I promised her I would protect it. I did not know that I was already too late. The night my grandmother died, I was 26 years old, living in a small apartment in Somerville, trying to build a life outside the Hartwell shadow. The hospital called at 11 at night. Not my parents, not my sister. The hospital. Grace had suffered a stroke. It was serious. I should come quickly. I drove 90 minutes to Cape Cod, breaking every speed limit, my heart pounding the entire way. When I arrived, Victoria was already in the hallway outside Grace's room. Her face was composed, controlled, already managing the situation. "You do not need to go in," she said, blocking my path. "She is unconscious. I am handling everything." I pushed past her into the room. Grace was pale, fragile, tubes and wires everywhere, machines beeping their mechanical rhythm. I held her hand for 3 hours, watching her chest rise and fall, willing her to wake up, to squeeze my fingers, to give me one more afternoon in the greenhouse. At 2 a.m, Victoria appeared again. "The doctors say it is only a matter of time," she said. her voice professionally sympathetic. "Go home. Get some rest. I will call you when it happens." I did not want to leave. But my mother arrived, and she sided with Victoria, as she always did. "You are just making this harder," she said, not looking at me. "Victoria knows what to do." I drove home. I fell asleep on my couch, exhausted and terrified. I woke to a text message from Victoria. "Grandma passed at 4:17 in the morning. Arrangements are being handled. Do not come to the house today. Mom needs space. Do not come to the house." My grandmother was dead, and I was not even allowed to grieve with my family. I did not know then that Victoria had been alone with Grace in those final hours. I did not know what was said, what was signed, what was taken. I would not find out for another 2 years. The funeral was 3 days later, formal, 200 guests, a catered reception at the mansion. I stood in the back wearing the only black dress I owned, watching strangers talk about my grandmother like they had known her. Victoria gave the eulogy. It was beautiful, moving, perfectly delivered. Not once did she mention the greenhouse, the remedies, the afternoons Grace spent teaching me the secrets she had learned from her own grandmother. After the reception, I slipped upstairs to Grace's room. I searched everywhere, closets, drawers, under the bed, behind furniture. I was looking for the box she had promised me. It was nowhere. I found Victoria in the hallway, her funeral mask still perfectly in place. "Grandma said she was leaving me something," I told her. "A box. Do you know where it is?" Victoria's face flickered for just a moment, something unreadable passing through her eyes, before smoothing back into sympathy. "Oh, Elena," she said, her voice dripping with practiced compassion. Grandma was confused at the end. She said a lot of things that did not make sense. There was no box. I knew she was lying. I could feel it in my bones, in the way her eyes did not quite meet mine, in the slight pause before she answered. But I could not prove it. I had no evidence, no witnesses, nothing but the word of a dead woman and the instinct of a daughter no one believed. What I did not know then was that the box existed. It was real. And Victoria had not destroyed it. She had hidden it. Because destroying it would have left evidence. And my sister never left evidence. But my grandmother did. 2 years after my grandmother died, I finally stopped grieving and started working. I channeled everything I had lost into creation, into the formulas Grace had taught me, into building something that was entirely my own. I was 28 years old, living in a cramped one-bedroom apartment in Somerville, working days as a cosmetic chemist at a mid-tier skincare company where I formulated the same boring products month after month. But nights and weekends belonged to my real work. I had converted half my bedroom into a makeshift laboratory, a second-hand centrifuge humming on a folding table, pH meters lined up beside rows of botanical extracts in amber bottles. The space smelled like lavender and rosehip and possibility. It smelled like my grandmother's greenhouse. I was developing something revolutionary. Not just another moisturizer or serum, but a bioactive compound using botanical fermentation that could penetrate skin layers more effectively than anything on the market. The formula was based on Grace's greenhouse teachings, combined with my advanced chemistry knowledge. Early tests showed remarkable results: healing, regeneration, anti-inflammatory properties without a single synthetic chemical. I called it Project Bloom, a private tribute to my grandmother's garden, to the afternoons she had spent teaching me secrets that had been passed down through generations of women in our family. No one knew what I was working on. My parents thought I was still playing with lotions. Victoria had never once asked about my work. I preferred it that way. This was mine, untouched by Hartwell judgment, uncontaminated by family politics. For the first time since Grace died, I felt like I was building something that mattered. Then my mother called. It was March 2021, a Thursday evening. I was in the middle of a fermentation cycle, watching the compounds separate under the centrifuge, when my phone lit up with her name. I almost did not answer. Conversations with my mother rarely ended well for me, but something made me pick up. "Elena, we need to talk about Victoria." Her voice had that particular edge, the one that meant this was not a request. "Hartwell Hospitality was going through a difficult quarter," she explained. "The luxury market was shifting. Clients wanted clean beauty now, natural ingredients, sustainable sourcing. Victoria's spa division was struggling to keep up." "Your sister needs help," my mother said. "You understand all that botanical nonsense. She just needs a little guidance." The word nonsense stung, even wrapped in a request for help. My entire career, my research, my expertise reduced to nonsense. But I heard something else beneath my mother's words. An opportunity. Maybe, I thought, this was finally a chance to be valued, to prove myself, to show my family that my work mattered. I hesitated. "I am in the middle of my own research," I said. "I do not really have time to take on consulting work." "Elena," my mother's voice sharpened into something harder. "This family has given you everything. The least you can do is help your sister. It is not like your little experiments are going anywhere." The message was clear, the same message I had heard my entire life. Victoria's work mattered. Mine did not. But I was tired of fighting, tired of being the difficult daughter, tired of standing outside the family circle looking in. "Fine," I said. "I will consult. But just the basics." "Of course, sweetheart, just the basics. I should have known better." I should have heard the satisfaction in her voice, the way she said just the basics like it was a private joke. But I wanted so badly to believe that this time would be different, that this time my family might actually see me. 2 weeks later, I arrived at Hartwell Hospitality's Boston headquarters, a glass tower on Atlantic Avenue with our family name etched in brushed steel above the entrance. Victoria's office was on the 14th floor, a corner suite with harbor views and fresh flowers on every surface. She greeted me with an air kiss, her perfume expensive and overwhelming. "Elena," she said warmly, "thank you so much for coming. This means everything." It was the first time in years that Victoria had seemed genuinely happy to see me. I wanted to believe it was real. I had prepared a basic presentation. General concepts about botanical chemistry, clean beauty trends, ingredient sourcing strategies. Nothing proprietary, nothing about Project Bloom. I was careful. I thought I was being smart. Victoria listened intently, taking notes in a leather-bound notebook, nodding at all the right moments. She asked questions, good questions actually, the kind that showed she was paying attention. What makes botanical fermentation different from synthetic compounds? How do you ensure stability without preservatives? What is the timeline from formulation to market-ready product? And then came the flattery. "Elena, this is incredible," she said, her eyes wide with what looked like genuine admiration. "I had no idea you knew so much. Why did you never tell us about this? You are basically a scientist, like a real one." I felt something unfamiliar. Seen, appreciated, included. For the first time in my adult life, my sister was looking at me like I mattered. I started sharing more than I had planned. General frameworks, ingredient combinations, sourcing strategies. Still nothing about my specific formula, but close, dangerously close. At one point, Victoria leaned forward with an innocent smile. "Do you have any samples? Something I could show the board?" I hesitated. "I am still in development," I said. "It is not ready for outside review." Of course. Victoria waved her hand dismissively. "Just curious. Maybe someday you will let me be your first investor." I laughed. I thought she was joking. She was not joking. Over the following weeks, Victoria called regularly. "Just checking in," she would say. "Thinking about what you said. Had a few more questions." I was flattered at first. Finally, a relationship with my sister. Finally, someone in my family who cared about my work. But the questions grew more specific with each conversation. What exact ratios do you use for the fermentation process? Where do you source your calendula? Your rose hip? Do you have your formulations written down somewhere? I would love to see your process. Something felt wrong, but I could not name it. Victoria had never cared about my work before. Why now? I started giving vague answers, deflecting the specifics. I am still experimenting. Nothing is finalized yet. Each time I deflected, Victoria's warmth cooled just slightly. Then she asked to visit my lab. I would love to see where the magic happens, she said brightly. See your little setup. Every instinct screamed no. My apartment was private. My work was private. But I did not know how to say no to family. I had never learned how. Victoria arrived on a Saturday morning, looking completely out of place in her designer coat and Hermes scarf, wrinkling her nose at the narrow stairwell. I showed her the makeshift lab, the equipment, the samples, the notebooks. She photographed everything. For inspiration, she said. She lingered at my desk near the laptop where all my formulations were stored. Her eyes moved across the screen, the files, the folders. Then she smiled. "Can I use your bathroom?" I said yes. I did not think anything of it. She was my sister. Victoria was in the bathroom for 12 minutes. I noticed because I was timing a fermentation sample. When she emerged, she was effusive. "This is amazing, Elena. You are going to change the industry." I felt proud, validated, finally seen by someone in my own family. That night, after Victoria left, I sat down at my laptop to continue working. The screen was warm, recently used. I checked the file directory. Last accessed, 3:47 p.m. I had been standing with Victoria explaining my extraction process. At 3:47 p.m., my blood went cold. I opened my master formulation file, Project Bloom. Every iteration, every compound ratio, every proprietary detail of the formula I had spent 2 years developing. Last opened, 3:42 p.m. Someone had accessed my life's work, and there was only one person it could have been. My grandmother's voice echoed in my memory, words I had not understood until this moment. "Your sister takes what she wants. Remember that." I had not listened then. I was listening now. I did not confront Victoria that night. I needed to think, to plan, to protect what was left. But one thing was already clear. The sister who had finally seemed to love me had only ever wanted what she could take, and she had taken everything. For 2 weeks I said nothing. I watched. I documented. I waited. Every night after work, I sat at my laptop and saved screenshots of the file access logs, the metadata that proved someone had opened my formulations while I was standing in my own apartment showing my sister around. I backed up everything to an encrypted drive. I wrote down dates, times, details of every conversation Victoria and I had shared. I told myself I needed proof before I accused my sister. But the truth was simpler. I was terrified of what confrontation would cost me. I had spent my entire life trying to earn a place in my family. Accusing Victoria of theft meant giving up any hope of ever belonging. But I could not sleep. I could not focus at my day job. Every time I looked at Project Bloom, my life's work, I felt sick knowing that Victoria had her hands on it. My grandmother's voice echoed in my head. "Your sister takes what she wants." Grace had known. Grace had tried to warn me, and I had walked right into the trap anyway, so desperate for approval that I had handed my sister the keys to everything I had built. 2 weeks after the laptop incident, I made my decision. I called Victoria. "I need to talk to you," I said. "In person. It is important." Her voice was breezy, unconcerned. "Of course. Come by the office tomorrow. We can grab lunch." I did not want lunch. I wanted answers. I will be there at 10. Victoria's corner office looked the same as before. Harbor views, fresh flowers, everything polished and perfect. She was radiant that morning, new highlights in her hair, a designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "Elena," she said warmly, "sit down. Coffee? I was just telling Marcus about your little lab visit." I did not sit. My laptop was accessed while you were in my apartment. The shift was instant. Victoria's smile froze for just a moment, then recalibrated into something that looked like confusion. "Excuse me?" My formulation files, I said. Someone opened them at 3:42 in the afternoon. You were the only other person there. She laughed. It was a practiced sound, dismissive and light, the kind of laugh designed to make the other person feel foolish. Elena, that is insane. I was in your bathroom. I did not touch your computer. I held firm. The timestamps do not lie. Victoria's expression shifted again, this time into something that looked almost like concern. Honey, she said slowly, I think you are stressed. You have been working so hard on this little project. Maybe you opened the files yourself and forgot. I did not forget. She sighed, shaking her head with exaggerated sisterly pity. This is exactly why Mom worries about you. You have always been a little paranoid. Remember when you thought your college roommate was stealing your notes? And it turned out you had just misplaced them? I had not misplaced anything. But the memory still stung, the way family myths always do. Stories repeated so many times they become truth whether they happened or not. That was different, I said. Was it? Victoria tilted her head, her eyes wide with false sympathy. Elena, I am your sister. I would never steal from you. The fact that you would even suggest it honestly hurts. She was doing it. Right in front of me, without blinking, she was rewriting reality, making me the villain, making herself the victim. I had watched her do it to other people for years. I just never thought she would do it to me. I left her office without another word. I knew confronting her had been a mistake. Within hours, my phone rang. My mother. Victoria just called me in tears, she said, her voice sharp with accusation. She said you accused her of stealing? I tried to explain. The laptop, the timestamps, the questions about my formulations that had grown more specific with each conversation. Margaret cut me off before I could finish. Elena, stop. Just stop. Your sister has bent over backward to include you. She asked for your help. She visited your apartment. She has tried to build a relationship with you. And this is how you repay her? Mom, I have proof. Proof of what? Margaret's voice dripped with contempt. That your computer was used while you were home? That could have been anyone. That could have been you. I tried one more time. There was no one else there. The silence on the other end was worse than her words. When she spoke again, her voice was ice. You have always been jealous of your sister. Since you were children, I had hoped you would grow out of it, but apparently not. Drop it. Apologize to Victoria, and maybe take some time to reflect on why you always need to be the victim. The line went dead. I stood in my apartment, phone in hand, feeling like the floor had dropped out beneath me. I had proof. I had evidence. And none of it mattered because my family had already decided who to believe. 3 days later, my world collapsed again. Marcus and I had been engaged for 3 years. We had met at a chemistry conference where he was doing pharmaceutical sales. He was charming, ambitious, the kind of man who made you feel like the only person in the room. We were not soulmates, but we were comfortable, stable. I had spent so many years feeling invisible that being seen by someone, anyone, felt like enough. Our wedding was planned for fall. The venue was booked. The dress was bought. I had allowed myself to imagine a future outside the Hartwell shadow. Then Marcus called. His voice was strange, distant, rehearsed. Elena, we need to talk. I have been doing a lot of thinking. My stomach dropped. I knew that tone. I did not think we should get married, he continued. I do not think we are right for each other. I tried to understand. I asked questions. I begged for explanations. Marcus was vague. I have just been feeling disconnected. We want different things. What things? What changed? Nothing changed. I have just realized some things about myself. He ended the call before I could respond. I sat on my apartment floor, surrounded by formula notes and research files, and I cried for the first time since my grandmother died. First Victoria, now Marcus. Everything I had was disappearing. Something nagged at me in the days that followed. The timing was too perfect. Victoria confrontation on Monday. Marcus breakup on Thursday. But I pushed the thought away. Even Victoria would not do that. Would she? 2 months later, I received an envelope in the mail. Thick cream cardstock, calligraphy addressing, the kind of stationery used for important announcements. Inside was a wedding invitation. Victoria Hartwell and Marcus Webb request the pleasure of your company. The wedding was 2 months away. The venue was the Cape Cod mansion. I read the invitation 3 times, certain I was hallucinating. Marcus, my Marcus, marrying my sister, 2 months after breaking our engagement. The math did not work unless they had been together before he ended things, unless Victoria had been stealing more than formulas. I called my mother, my voice shaking. Did you know about this? Margaret's response was cool, unsurprised. Victoria and Marcus reconnected after your relationship ended. These things happen, Elena. You cannot blame them for finding happiness. They were together before he broke up with me. Do not be dramatic. You are just upset because you could not keep him. You could not keep him. Like Marcus was a possession I had misplaced. Like losing him was my failure, not their betrayal. 2 weeks before Victoria's wedding, I attended a Hartwell Hospitality charity gala. I stood in a corner, avoiding eye contact, counting the minutes until I could leave. A young woman in a hotel staff uniform approached me, nervous, looking over her shoulder. Miss Hartwell? Elena? Yes? I am sorry, she whispered. I am so sorry about what happened. I did not understand. Sorry about what? She glanced around, then spoke quickly, her voice barely audible. Your sister. She planned this for months. Marcus, the formulas, all of it. I heard her on the phone back in February, before she even visited your apartment. She told someone, by summer, I will have everything she has. Before I could respond, the woman disappeared into the crowd. I stood frozen, champagne warming in my hand. February, before the consultation, before the lab visit, before everything. Victoria had not stumbled into opportunity. She had orchestrated destruction. My work, my fiancé, my place in this family. All of it taken by design. I made a decision in that moment, standing alone at my family's party, surrounded by people who had never seen me. I would document everything, trust no one. And when the time was right, I would take it all back. I did not know how, I did not know when. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. My sister had underestimated me for the last time. By the time the letter arrived, I had almost given up. 1 year had passed since Victoria's wedding to Marcus, a ceremony I did not attend, a celebration of everything that had been stolen from me. 1 year since the confrontation that cost me any remaining hope of belonging to my family. I had moved from Somerville to a smaller apartment in Cambridge, telling myself it was a fresh start, knowing it was really just a smaller life. I worked my day job at a generic skincare company, formulating products for someone else's vision, collecting a paycheck that barely covered rent. Project Bloom sat untouched on my hard drive, too painful to open, too precious to delete. I was 29 years old, and I felt like my life was already over. I had no contact with my family except obligatory holiday text messages that went unanswered on both sides. Friends had drifted away because I had pushed them away, embarrassed by everything that had happened, unable to explain why I had become so small. I spent my evenings alone, eating takeout in front of the television, trying not to think about the sister who had taken everything and the family that had let her. On a Thursday afternoon in early 2022, I checked my mailbox without expecting anything but bills and junk. There was a thick manila envelope mixed in with the usual stack. The return address read Brennan and Associates, Attorneys at Law, Boston. I did not recognize the name. I almost threw it away, assuming it was some kind of scam or solicitation. But something made me open it. Call it instinct. Call it fate. Call it my grandmother reaching through time to tap me on the shoulder. Inside the envelope was a formal letter on heavy cream stationery, with a handwritten note clipped to the front. I read the typed letter first. my hands trembling before I finished the opening paragraph. Dear Ms. Elena Hartwell, I am writing to inform you of assets held in trust on your behalf by the late Grace Eleanor Hartwell. Your grandmother established a private trust 3 years before her death, separate from the Hartwell family estate and unknown to other family members. As sole beneficiary, you are entitled to liquid assets totaling $2.8 million, as well as the contents of a safe deposit box to be released upon your 30th birthday, or when circumstances warranted, whichever came first. I read the letter 3 times before the words made sense. $2.8 million. A private trust. Unknown to other family members. My grandmother had hidden money for me, had planned for exactly this moment, had known somehow that I would need it. The handwritten note was clipped to the front of the letter, written in careful script on Thomas Brennan's personal stationery. Elena, it read, your grandmother asked me to watch over you. She said you would need this when things got hard. I believe that time has come. Please call my office to arrange a meeting. There is more you need to know. 3 days later, I sat in a leather chair at Brennan & Associates, a old Boston law firm with mahogany furniture and law books lining every wall. Thomas Brennan was 72 years old, with silver hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He had been Grace's personal attorney for 40 years, since before I was born. He spoke carefully, like he had rehearsed this conversation many times. Your grandmother came to me in 2016, he said. She was concerned about family dynamics. He paused, choosing his words with precision. She believed Victoria was manipulating the main estate documents, pressuring her to change beneficiaries. My breath caught in my throat. Manipulating how? Emotional coercion. Thomas's voice was gentle, but his words were not. Threats, even. Grace wanted to ensure you received something Victoria could not touch. He explained that Grace had been methodical. She had documented every concerning interaction with Victoria. She had kept a private journal separate from anything the family knew about. She had transferred funds slowly, carefully, to avoid detection. Your grandmother was sharper than anyone gave her credit for, Thomas said. She knew exactly what was happening in that family, and she prepared. He slid a small brass key across the desk toward me. This opens a safe deposit box at First Republic Bank on Newberry Street. The contents are yours. I stared at the key, small and ordinary looking, and felt the weight of everything it represented. What is in it? Thomas's expression softened. I never opened it, but Grace told me once that it contained everything you needed to understand the truth. I believe she meant it literally. I went straight from the law office to Newberry Street. First Republic Bank was all marble floors and hushed voices, old money atmosphere that reminded me of everything I had tried to escape. I showed my identification, signed papers, followed a banker to the vault room. The safe deposit box was small, maybe 12 inches long and 6 inches wide. I carried it to a private viewing room and sat alone at a polished table, the brass key in my trembling hand. I thought about my grandmother, the greenhouse, the lavender, the whispered warnings I had not understood until too late. Your sister takes what she wants. Remember that. I turned the key. Inside, wrapped in velvet cloth, were 4 items. A leather-bound journal with private written in Grace's handwriting on the cover. A stack of handwritten recipe cards, botanical formulas in her careful script. A sealed envelope addressed to me. And a small velvet pouch containing a pair of pearl earrings I recognized immediately. They were Grace's everyday pearls, the ones she had worn in every photograph I had ever seen of her, the ones Victoria had claimed at the funeral. I opened the envelope first, my hands shaking. Grace's voice was preserved in ink, speaking to me across the years. My dearest Elena, if you are reading this, then things have happened as I feared. Victoria took things from me too, near the end. My dignity, my choices, my peace. I documented everything in this journal. The truth is there, in my own words. Use it when you are ready. Not for revenge, sweetheart. For justice. There is a difference. I believe in you. I always have. All my love, Grandma Grace. I pressed the letter to my chest and cried. My grandmother had known. She had seen what was coming, had prepared for exactly this moment, had loved me enough to build me a weapon from beyond the grave. I opened the journal with reverent care. Grace had written in it for years. But the final months were different. Detailed, specific, dated, evidence. August 2019. Victoria visited today. She wants me to change the will again, remove Elena entirely. Says Elena does not appreciate family. I refused. September 2019. V threatened me. Said if I give Elena anything, she will make sure I die alone in a nursing home. She meant it. I saw it in her eyes. October 2019, 2 weeks before she died. I am not well. I know the end is coming. Victoria is here every day now, hovering, pressuring. She does not know about the trust. She does not know about this journal. Some secrets are worth keeping. The final entry was dated the day before Grace died. Elena visited today, but V sent her away. I tried to tell her about the box, but could not speak clearly. I hope she finds it. I hope she knows I never forgot her. I hope she fights. Tears streamed down my face as I read every word. My grandmother had been a prisoner in her final days. Victoria had isolated her, threatened her, taken everything. And Grace had fought back the only way she could, with documentation, with preparation, with love that outlasted her own life. I turned to the recipe cards, my grandmother's botanical formulas, the foundation of everything I had developed. But there was more. Notes in the margins in different ink. Elena's improvements. Calendula fermentation process. March 2020. Grace had been tracking my innovations, adding them to her own records. She had been building a paper trail of ownership that predated anything Victoria could claim. I now had everything I needed. $2.8 million in funding, a journal documenting Victoria's manipulation and threats, original formulas with timestamps predating any Hartwell hospitality claims. My grandmother's blessing to fight. I was not ready yet. I needed to build something first, something undeniable, something Victoria could not dismiss or destroy. But now I had the resources, the proof, the permission. I closed the journal and whispered to the empty room. Thank you, Grandma. I will not let you down, and I will not let her win. The money changed everything, but not in the way people think. When the $2.8 million from my grandmother's trust became accessible, I did not buy a new car or a bigger apartment. I did not take a vacation or splurge on designer clothes. I bought protection, infrastructure, time. I quit my day job with 2 weeks' notice and a professional exit, leaving behind the boring formulations and the paycheck that had kept me trapped. I rented a proper laboratory space in Kendall Square, small but legitimate, nestled in the heart of Boston's biotech corridor near MIT. I purchased professional-grade equipment, centrifuges, spectrometers, climate-controlled storage units for my botanical compounds. Every receipt was saved. Every expense was documented. I was building a company, but more importantly, I was building a fortress. Before my grandmother's inheritance, I had worked in fear. Afraid of being seen, afraid of being discovered, afraid that Victoria would somehow find a way to take whatever I created next. Now I worked with purpose. Grace's words echoed in my mind every morning when I walked into my new lab. Not revenge, sweetheart. For justice. There is a difference. Justice required patience, precision, and paperwork. I would become so legitimate, so documented, so undeniable, that when the truth finally came out, no one would be able to question it. Thomas Brennan recommended a patent attorney named David Chen, a specialist in biotech and cosmetic chemistry intellectual property. David was young and sharp, had worked with MIT startups, and understood both the science and the law. I met him at his office in the financial district, my portfolio of formulations in a leather bag on my lap. David reviewed my work with growing interest, flipping through pages of compound ratios and fermentation processes. This botanical fermentation technique, he said slowly, I have not seen anything like it in the commercial skincare space. This is genuinely innovative. I explained the origins. My grandmother's foundations, refined over decades. My own chemistry background, adding modern science to traditional knowledge. I showed him the timeline. Grace's original recipe cards with dates in her handwriting, my lab notebooks with time-stamped entries, photographs of early experiments in my Somerville apartment. David laid out the protection strategy with the precision of a general planning a campaign. File provisional patents immediately to establish priority dates. Document every iteration, every compound ratio, every test result. Create a paper trail so thorough that even the best lawyers cannot break it. He slid the forms across his desk toward me. If anyone tries to claim your work, he said, we will bury them in timestamps. March 15, 2022. I filed my first patent application. 14 claims covering the core fermentation process, key compound combinations, and delivery mechanisms. Every line of research, every formula iteration, legally and permanently mine. As I signed the final document, I thought about Victoria somewhere across the city, probably planning her next move. Too late, sister, I whispered to myself. I got there first. I knew I could not build alone. Through MIT entrepreneurship networks, I found the partners who would become my family. Ali Nguyen was a marketing strategist who had left a senior position at a major cosmetics corporation to work with mission-driven startups. She was brilliant, driven, and completely unimpressed by legacy and pedigree. Derek Santos handled operations and supply chain, having scaled 2 clean beauty brands before they were acquired by larger companies. He was practical, experienced, and had a dark sense of humor that cut through tension. I invited them to my Kendall Square lab and showed them everything, the formulas, the early test results, the vision. We are not just making skincare, I told them. We are proving that botanical chemistry can outperform synthetic, that my grandmother's knowledge combined with modern science can change an entire industry. Ally leaned forward, her eyes sharp with interest. What is the catch? Why has no one funded this already? I paused, then I told them everything. Victoria, the theft, the family that had chosen my sister over truth, the journal documenting years of manipulation, the evidence I was still gathering. Silence filled the lab. Then Derek spoke, a slow smile spreading across his face. So we are building something incredible, and we get to watch karma work in real time? Something like that. I am in, he said immediately. Ali nodded. Me too. Let us bury them. We incorporated Bloom Botanics in April 2022. I served as CEO and Chief Scientific Officer. Ally became Chief Marketing Officer. Derek took Chief Operations Officer. Equal partners with an aligned mission and no family complications. For the first time in years, I had people I could trust. People who saw my work for what it was worth. People who chose me. June 2022. I was in my lab reviewing fermentation cycles when Allie burst through the door with her phone in her hand. Her face was pale. You need to see this. She held up the screen. A Hartwell Hospitality press release filled the display. V-Beauty by Victoria Hartwell. Revolutionary botanical skincare for the modern woman. My stomach dropped as I read the details. 6 products. Botanical fermentation technology. Nature meets luxury. The language was familiar. Too familiar. I pulled up the product descriptions and compared them line by line to my own research notes. The core claims mirrored my formulations. Not exactly, but close enough that I could see my own work underneath Victoria's branding. I checked the dates with growing fury. Victoria visited my apartment in April 2021. V-Beauty's trademark was filed in June 2021, 2 months later. Product development began in fall 2021. V-Beauty launched in June 2022. Every step tracked perfectly to Victoria's access to my files. The theft was not impulsive. It was a business plan. I wanted to scream. I wanted to call Victoria, to expose everything immediately, to burn down her empire before it could stand. But I forced myself to think. I had filed my patents in March 2022. Victoria's trademark was from June 2021. Trademarks protected brand names. Patents protected innovation. Victoria had a brand. I had the science. David Chen confirmed my thinking when I called him in a panic. Her products may use similar concepts, he said calmly, but your patents cover the actual innovation. The fermentation process, the compound combinations, the delivery mechanisms. When the time comes, we have her. I forced myself to be strategic. Victoria had Hartwell resources, family lawyers, media connections. A premature fight would be expensive and public with uncertain outcomes. Better to build, grow, become undeniable. Let her have her launch, I told myself. Let her think she won. I will be ready when it matters. Bloom Botanics grew quietly, deliberately invisible to the Hartwell radar. No press releases, no social media presence, no industry events where Victoria might notice my name. I operated in stealth mode, known only to investors, partners, and patent offices. By the end of 2022, we had finalized 3 product formulations, each fully patented. We had secured a small batch manufacturing partner in Vermont. We had closed seed funding from 2 biotech-focused venture capital firms, $1.2 million to accelerate development. Clinical trials were arranged with a dermatology research group affiliated with Boston University. While building, I also documented. Every V-Beauty product was analyzed and compared to my formulas. Victoria's public statements about developing the botanical line were saved. Hartwell Hospitality investor presentations mentioning V-Beauty's innovation were archived. Industry articles praising Victoria's groundbreaking work were filed away with bitter satisfaction. Thomas Brennan helped maintain the legal documentation. "When you are ready," he said during one of our monthly calls, "this will be irrefutable." I watched Victoria accept awards, give interviews, pose for magazine covers. Pioneer in clean beauty, visionary entrepreneur, the future of Hartwell Hospitality, every headline burned. But I reminded myself that it was temporary. All of it was temporary. My moment was coming. By fall 2023, Bloom Botanics had exceeded every projection. Our first product was approved for market in March. Partnership discussions with high-end retailers began in June. In September, we closed Series A funding at $8 million with a valuation of $42 million. Still small compared to Victoria's empire, but growing fast. In October, I received an email that stopped me cold. My mother's name in my inbox for the first time in almost 2 years. "Thanksgiving at the Cape," she wrote. "Your father insists you come. It would mean a lot to him." I stared at the screen for a long time. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to stay safe in the world I was building. But another part, the part that still remembered being that little girl desperate for approval, hesitated. I typed my reply before I could change my mind. I will be there. I did not know what waited for me at that dinner table, but I knew one thing with certainty. I was not the same person who had left, and they were about to find out. I had not set foot in my parents' house in 2 years. The moment I walked through the door, I remembered why. The Cape Cod mansion looked exactly as I remembered, white columns framing the entrance, circular driveway perfectly maintained, gardens manicured even in November. The salt air bit at my cheeks as I stepped out of my modest Honda, parked between Victoria's Mercedes and Marcus's Porsche. I was an outsider pulling up to my own childhood home, and every detail reminded me of my place in this family. My mother greeted me at the door with an air kiss that landed somewhere near my ear. "Elena, you came. I was not sure you would." Her tone suggested she had been hoping I would not. The house looked the same inside, family portraits on the walls, fresh flowers in crystal vases, everything polished and perfect. But I noticed something that stopped me in the foyer. The photographs had been rearranged. My grandmother's portrait, which had hung in the main hallway for as long as I could remember, was gone. In its place hung Victoria's wedding portrait, Victoria and Marcus in soft focus, looking like a magazine advertisement for inherited wealth. I forced myself to keep walking, to smile, to play the role of the grateful daughter invited back into the fold. But my grandmother's absence from these walls felt deliberate. Erasure disguised as redecorating. The dining room was set for a performance. Long mahogany table, my grandmother's crystal and china, which Victoria had claimed after the funeral. Fresh flowers in silver vases. 12 guests arranged by my mother's careful social engineering. Family, business partners, a state senator who did something with zoning laws. The family accountant who had been laundering the Hartwell reputation for decades. I was seated at the far end of the table, near the door to the kitchen, next to my father's golf partner's wife, a woman whose name I had been told 4 times and still could not remember. Victoria sat at my mother's right hand, center of attention, glowing in a designer maternity dress that probably cost more than my first car. She was pregnant. I had heard through distant channels, but seeing her rounded belly made it real. She dominated the conversation from the first course onward, her voice carrying over the clink of silverware and polite murmurs. V Beauty was expanding to 12 new hotel locations. Industry awards were being engraved with her name. Partnerships with luxury retailers were being finalized. "We have completely revolutionized botanical skincare," Victoria announced to the table, her hand resting on her belly in a gesture of maternal satisfaction. The response has been overwhelming. I kept my eyes on my plate, said nothing. Across the table, Marcus sat in his tailored suit, the picture of a devoted husband. He glanced at me once, just once, then looked away so quickly it was almost violent. He had not spoken a single word to me since our engagement ended. I wondered if he ever thought about it. Probably not. Men like Marcus rewrote history to make themselves the hero. As Victoria continued her monologue about disrupting the beauty industry, I noticed something that made my blood turn to ice. Around her neck, catching the candlelight, was my grandmother's emerald pendant, the one Grace had worn every day for 50 years, the one she had told me in her journal she wanted me to have. Victoria saw me staring. She smiled. Then she touched the pendant deliberately, her fingers lingering on the stone. "Beautiful, is it not? Grandma wanted me to have it. She said it suited me." I knew she was lying. Grace's journal had mentioned this necklace specifically, had written that it should go to Elena, the only one who understood its meaning. But I could not prove it here, not now, not surrounded by witnesses who would believe anything Victoria said. I looked down at my plate and said nothing. My mother stood to make introductions as the main course arrived. "Most of you know my daughter Victoria," she beamed, her pride radiating across the table. "CEO of V Beauty, the fastest-growing division of Hartwell Hospitality. We are so proud of what she is building. She just closed partnerships with 2 major hotel chains and 3 luxury retailers." Applause rippled around the table. Victoria raised her wine glass with practiced humility, accepting the tribute as her due. "And this is Elena." My mother's voice changed, still pleasant but cooler, like she was introducing a distant relative no one had asked about. "Elena is in the skincare business as well. She is very bright, but she is not much for socializing." Polite smiles from the guests. One of them, a woman dripping with diamonds, leaned toward me. "Oh, which company?" Before I could answer, Victoria interrupted. "Elena has a little startup. Very niche. I keep telling her she should come work for V Beauty. We could use her chemistry background." The condescension was surgical, delivered with a sisterly smile that fooled everyone except me. I felt every cut, every implication, little startup, niche, chemistry background, like I was some lab assistant who might be useful for grunt work. After the main course, my mother stood again. "I have wonderful news to share," she announced, her face glowing with anticipation. "Victoria and Marcus are expecting their first child. A boy, due in April." The table erupted in congratulations. Victoria's eyes glistened with perfectly timed tears. Marcus put his arm around her shoulders, the proud father-to-be. My mother continued, her voice thick with emotion. "Finally, a real Hartwell heir, someone to carry on the family legacy." She did not look at me. She did not need to. The implication was clear enough. Victoria's child mattered. I never had. One of the guests turned to me, perhaps trying to include me in the celebration. "And what about you, dear? Any special someone?" Victoria laughed lightly before I could respond. "Elena is married to her work. Are you not, Elena?" I forced a smile that hurt my face. Something like that. I excused myself before dessert, claiming I needed to use the restroom. Instead, I walked through the back hallway and out to the garden, desperate for air that did not smell like hypocrisy and expensive perfume. My feet carried me automatically to my grandmother's greenhouse, the place where I had spent the happiest hours of my childhood. It was abandoned now, glass panels dusty and cracked, the plants inside brown and dead. Victoria had not bothered to maintain it. Grace's legacy, left to rot. I did not hear my father approach. He appeared beside me, hands in his pockets, looking at the ruined greenhouse with an expression I could not read. "Elena, Dad." We stood in silence, the sound of waves in the distance, the party continuing without us inside. "I know something is wrong," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "Between you and your sister, between you and all of us." I finally looked at him. His face was older than I remembered, tired in a way that makeup and expensive suits could not hide. "I am sorry I cannot," he started, then stopped. "I am sorry I have not." He could not finish the sentence, could not name what he was apologizing for. But the fact that he was trying, that he had followed me out here, that he was speaking to me at all, it was more than he had done in years. "Your grandmother used to say you were the strongest of all of us," he said quietly. She was right. I felt tears threatening and fought them back. "Then why did you never protect me?" His eyes dropped to the ground. He had no answer, just silence and the distant sound of waves. "I am sorry, Elena. I am sorry I was not brave enough." I looked at my father, this man who had watched his family choose favorites and said nothing, who had let his wife and eldest daughter run roughshod over everyone, who had traded his conscience for comfort. "Maybe someday, Dad," I said, "but not today." I walked back toward the house. He did not follow. Victoria caught me in the hallway before I could reach the front door. Her gracious hostess mask was gone. What was underneath was cold and predatory. "Leaving so soon? You barely touched your dessert. I need to get back to Boston." She stepped closer, blocking my path. "I know you are up to something, Elena. I have been watching you." I kept my face neutral despite my racing heart. "I do not know what you are talking about. Do not play stupid. Your little company, your patents. You think I do not have people watching?" "It is a free country, Victoria. I can start any company I want." Her voice dropped to a venomous whisper. "Let me be very clear. Whatever you are planning, stop. This family is mine. This industry is mine. Everything is mine." She touched the emerald pendant again. "Including this. If you try to come for me, I will destroy you. I did it once with Marcus. I did it with your formulas. I will do it again. I will destroy your little company. I will destroy your reputation. I will make sure you never work in this industry again. And this time, there will not be anything left to come back to." She was admitting it. Right here in our mother's hallway, without witnesses, she was confessing to everything. I looked at my sister, at the woman who had taken my work, my fiancé, my grandmother's love, and felt something unexpected. Not fear, pity. "You know what, Victoria? You are right about one thing." Her smile faltered slightly. "There will not be anything left. But not for me." I walked past her, opened the front door, and stepped into the cold November night without looking back. In the car, my hands shook on the steering wheel. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out my phone. The voice memo app was still running. I had started it when I saw Victoria approaching in the hallway. Her voice played back, crystal clear. "I did it once with Marcus. I did it with your formulas. I made one call. Thomas Brennan. Thomas. It is Elena. I am ready." The Monday after Thanksgiving, I walked into Thomas Brennan's office with 4 years of evidence in a rolling suitcase. I had spent the weekend organizing everything, categorizing documents, labeling recordings, creating timelines that traced every act of theft and manipulation. Thomas cleared his entire afternoon. David Chen joined via video call from his financial district office. The conference table became a war room. I laid out the evidence systematically, piece by piece, building a case that even the best lawyers could not dismiss. My grandmother's journal documenting Victoria's threats in her final months. The original formula cards in Grace's handwriting with dates predating any Hartwell hospitality claims. My lab notebooks with time-stamped entries from my Somerville apartment. Patent filings from March 2022, 3 months before V-Beauty's trademark application. File access logs from my laptop proving the breach. V-Beauty product analysis showing formulations that matched my research. And the Thanksgiving recording of Victoria admitting everything in her own voice. Thomas and David exchanged looks across the table. David spoke first, his voice careful and precise. This is not just intellectual property theft, Elena. This is fraud. Possibly elder abuse. Definitely perjury if she has made any false statements in official filings. I felt the weight of what I had built, not just a case, a weapon. What do we do with all of this? I asked. Thomas leaned back in his chair, studying me with those sharp old eyes. That depends. What do you want, Elena? Settlement? Criminal charges? Public exposure? I thought about my grandmother, about Victoria's smug smile at that dinner table, about every dismissal and theft and lie that had brought me to this moment. I want the truth, I said. I want everyone to know exactly who she is. Over the following weeks, Thomas dug deeper into Hartwell family records. He had contacts in places I did not know existed. Estate lawyers and probate clerks and people who owed him favors from 40 years of practicing law in Boston. I continued building Bloom Botanics while he investigated, pouring my energy into formulations and partnerships while the legal machinery turned in the background. In January 2024, Thomas called me with news that changed everything. "You need to come to my office," he said. His voice was strange, shaken in a way I had never heard from him. Now. When I arrived, Thomas looked pale. On his desk were copies of documents I had never seen before, legal papers covered in signatures and notary stamps. "I found something," he said. "Something bigger than formula theft." He slid a document across the desk toward me. It was a codicil to my grandmother's will, dated 2 weeks before her death. It removed me from the estate entirely and transferred additional assets to Victoria. I stared at the signature at the bottom of the page. It looked like my grandmother's handwriting. But something was wrong. The letters were too careful, too deliberate, lacking the natural flow of Grace's script. "This is not her handwriting," I said. Thomas nodded grimly. "I had it analyzed by a forensic document examiner. The signature is forged." The room seemed to tilt around me. Victoria forged my grandmother's signature? It appears so. The original will, the one filed with probate, left you 30% of the estate. This codicil eliminated that entirely. I did the math in my head. 30% of Grace's estate was approximately $4 million. Victoria had not just stolen my formulas. She had stolen my inheritance, forging documents while our grandmother lay dying. Thomas continued, his voice heavy. "There is more. Several bank transfers in Grace's final weeks, totaling over $2 million, moved from her personal accounts to a trust controlled by Victoria. The signatures on those authorizations also appear to be forged. I felt sick. Victoria had plundered our grandmother's accounts while the woman was too weak to stop her, had pressured her, threatened her, and when that was not enough, had simply taken what she wanted with a forged pen. "This is elder abuse," Thomas said quietly. "Financial exploitation. Forgery." "These are felonies, Elena." I did not sleep for 3 days after Thomas's revelation. I walked through Cambridge at night. past the MIT buildings where I had once dreamed of changing the world, trying to process what my sister had done. Victoria had not just betrayed me. She had victimized a dying woman, our grandmother, who had loved us both, who had tried to protect me even at the end. Part of me wanted to go to the police immediately, but Thomas advised patience. "Criminal charges take years," he said. "Victoria has resources, lawyers, connections. She could tie this up in court until you are 40. The alternative was public exposure. Coordinate everything, the IPO, the evidence, the media. Make it impossible to bury." I started seeing a therapist that spring, a woman named Dr. Sarah Chen, who came recommended by a friend from my MIT days. In our first session, I unloaded everything: the family, the theft, the forged documents, the weight of carrying this secret while building a company. Dr. Chen listened without judgment, then asked me a question that cut through all the noise. "What do you want?" Not justice in the abstract. "What do you want?" I thought for a long moment before answering. "I want to stop being invisible. I want the truth to matter, and I want to know I did this the right way, not just the angry way." Dr. Chen nodded. "Then we have work to do. While I built my legal case, Bloom Botanics exploded. We launched 3 hero products in March 2024, and clean beauty influencers discovered them organically within weeks. Sales exceeded projections by 400% in the first quarter." Industry press started noticing. "The startup that came from nowhere," one headline read. Investors circled like sharks, Series B discussions filling my calendar. Major retailers reached out, Sephora and Nordstrom and Credo Beauty, all wanting to carry our products. I did no interviews, maintained minimal public profile. But whispers started spreading through the industry. Who is Elena Hartwell? Any relation to the Hartwell Hospitality Hartwells? In June, Victoria called me directly for the first time in months. Her voice was pleasant, controlled, the polished hostess mask firmly in place. "Elena, congratulations on your little company's success. I have been following along." "Thank you. I think we should talk." Sister to sister. Maybe there is a way we can collaborate. I almost laughed. Victoria was scared. I could hear it underneath the polish, the slight tremor in her voice that her corporate training could not quite hide. "I do not think that is a good idea. Elena, whatever happened between us, that was years ago. We are family. Surely we can find common ground. I have to go, Victoria. Good luck with V Beauty." I hung up before she could respond. My hands were steady. Victoria reaching out meant she had heard rumors, knew something was coming even if she did not know what. Good. Let her worry. Let her lose sleep for once. In July, I received an email from Forbes magazine. A journalist named Rachel Morrison was writing a piece about women disrupting the beauty industry. She wanted to profile me and Bloom Botanics. My first instinct was to decline, to stay invisible until I was ready. But then I realized this was the platform I had been waiting for. I met Rachel at a coffee shop in Cambridge. She was sharp and experienced, exactly the kind of journalist who could handle a story this complicated. We talked about Bloom Botanics, about clean beauty, about my chemistry background. Then she asked the question I had been waiting for. "So, what is the story with your family? Any connection to Hartwell Hospitality?" I paused, weighed my options. "Off the record?" Rachel closed her notebook. I nodded and began to talk. When I finished, she was silent for a long moment. "This is a major story," she said finally. "Fraud, forgery, corporate theft, family betrayal." "I know. If you are willing to go on record, with documentation, this could be one of the biggest exposés in the beauty industry in years." I thought of my grandmother, of her journal, of her words about justice. "Not revenge, sweetheart. For justice." "I am willing," I said, "but I want to control the timing." "When?" "New Year's Eve, midnight, when my company goes public." Rachel's eyes widened. She understood what I was planning, the symmetry, the impact, the poetry of it. I returned to my war council that week. Thomas Brennan, David Chen, Allie, Derek, everyone gathered around my conference table. I presented the plan. Bloom Botanics IPO scheduled for December 31st, 2024. Forbes article embargo lifts at midnight, the same moment. Evidence package provided to the journalist with full documentation. Legal team prepared for Victoria's inevitable response. Thomas raised concerns. Victoria will sue. The family will close ranks. This could get ugly. It is already ugly, Thomas. It has been ugly my whole life. The difference is now everyone else will see it. David added his assessment. From an intellectual property standpoint, we are bulletproof. The patents predate everything Victoria claims. She cannot touch Bloom Botanics. Ali leaned forward. And from a PR standpoint? Elena, you are about to become a symbol. Underdog defeats corporate family. This story writes itself. Derek, ever practical, looked around the room. So we are really doing this? No turning back? I looked at the people who had believed in me when my family did not. These were my real partners, my real family. We are doing this. New Year's Eve, midnight. I thought of my grandmother's letter. Not revenge, sweetheart, for justice. This is for grace. 4 months until midnight, 4 months until the truth. I had waited 32 years for this moment. I could wait a little longer. 1 week before I would become a billionaire, my mother called to tell me I was not welcome at Christmas. It was December 18th, 2024. I was in my Cambridge apartment, reviewing the final IPO documents that would change everything, when my phone lit up with her name. I almost did not answer. Conversations with my mother never ended well. But something made me pick up. Maybe habit. Maybe the last stubborn ember of hope that refused to die. Her voice was brisk, businesslike, the tone she used for dismissing staff and declining invitations. Elena, I am calling about Christmas. We think it is best if you do not come this year. I was not surprised, but the words still landed like a blow. May I ask why? Victoria is under tremendous stress. The pregnancy has been difficult. Your presence would only upset her. The pregnancy. Victoria had given birth in April. Her son was now 8 months old. This had nothing to do with pregnancy stress and everything to do with what my mother sensed was coming. This is about Victoria's comfort, I said carefully. Or about what is coming. Silence on the other end. Then coldly, I do not know what you are implying. But the answer is no. You are not welcome. The line went dead before I could respond. I set down the phone and looked around my apartment. This small space I had made my own, filled with evidence folders and patent certificates and photographs of people who actually cared about me. My mother had just officially uninvited me from Christmas. The family I had spent 32 years trying to belong to did not want me at their holiday table. I should have felt devastated. Instead, I felt something unexpected. Freedom. No more pretending, no more performing, no more hoping they would change. They had made their choice. And in 7 days, I would make mine. December 25th, Christmas morning. I woke up in a guest room at Ali's house in Brookline, surrounded by the sounds of a family that actually liked each other. Ali's mother was already in the kitchen, the smell of cinnamon and coffee drifting up the stairs. Her father was arguing good-naturedly with her brother about football. 3 generations crowded into a colonial house that was warm and chaotic, and nothing like the polished performance of a Hartwell Christmas. Ali had insisted I come when she heard about my mother's call. You are not spending Christmas alone, she said. That is not happening. Derek was there too, along with 2 other Bloom Botanics team members who had nowhere else to go. Doctor, Sarah Chen stopped by in the afternoon with a tin of homemade cookies and a hug that lasted longer than professional boundaries probably allowed. I watched Ali's mother fuss over everyone equally, making sure every plate was full, every glass was topped off. No favoritism, no performance, just love, messy and loud and real. Ali's grandmother, a tiny woman with sharp eyes, pulled me aside near the dessert table. Ali tells me you are doing something brave next week, she said quietly. Good for you, honey. Some families do not deserve the loyalty they demand. I hugged this stranger who saw me more clearly than my own mother ever had. After dinner, I sat by the window watching snow fall on the quiet street. I thought about my grandmother Grace, about Christmases in the greenhouse when I was small, about the lavender and rosehip and the way she would tell me stories about the women in our family who came before. Grace would have loved Allie's family, would have loved seeing me surrounded by people who actually cared. "Merry Christmas, Grandma," I whispered to the window. I kept my promise. The day after Christmas, I returned to my Cambridge apartment to find a package on my doorstep. Small padded envelope, no return address. My name and address handwritten in block letters. Careful and deliberate, clearly disguised. No postmark. It had been hand-delivered. Inside was a USB drive and a single sheet of paper. The note was typed, no signature. "You are not the only one who knows the truth. Use this when you are ready. A friend." My heart raced as I carried the package inside. I plugged the USB into a secure laptop, one that was not connected to any network, and opened the contents. 3 audio files, dated from the previous 2 years. I clicked the first one. Victoria's voice filled my apartment, casual and confident. The voice of someone who believed she would never be caught. The formulas were easy. Elena practically handed them to me. She is so desperate for approval, she did not even question why I suddenly cared about her little project. My jaw tightened. I clicked the second file. Victoria again, laughing. Marcus was even easier. All I had to do was make him feel important. Elena never knew how to do that. She was so busy with her chemistry sets, she did not even notice him slipping away. The third file was the most damning. Victoria's voice, bragging to someone I could not identify. By the time she figures out what happened, it will be too late. V-Beauty will be worth millions. And Elena? She will still be making lotions in her apartment, wondering what went wrong. Dad feels guilty, but he will not do anything. He never does. I sat frozen, listening to my sister describe the destruction of my life, bragging about it, laughing about it. And someone had recorded everything. I spent the next hour examining the package, the note, the USB. Block letter handwriting, carefully disguised. No fingerprints I could detect. The recordings were from private settings, intimate conversations, not public events. Someone with access to Victoria's inner circle had captured these moments. I ran through the possibilities. A disgruntled employee? Possible, but how would they get such personal recordings? Marcus? No, he was too complicit, too invested in Victoria's success. My mother? Absolutely not. Margaret would never betray her golden child. That left one person, Richard, my father. I remembered Thanksgiving, my father following me to the greenhouse, his whispered apology. "I am sorry I was not brave enough." I remembered his single text message on the night the Forbes article would drop. "Elena. Please." Just those 2 words, different from everyone else's rage. Dad feels guilty, but he will not do anything. Victoria had said it herself. But what if she was wrong? What if my father had found a way to help without confronting anyone directly? It was exactly the kind of passive courage Richard would muster. Too afraid to speak up openly, but willing to slip evidence under the door when no one was watching. I did not try to confirm my suspicion. If it was my father, he was not ready to be exposed. If it was someone else, I did not want to endanger them. What mattered was this: I had more ammunition, more proof. Victoria's own voice, confirming everything. December 27th, emergency meeting with my war council. Thomas Brennan, David Chen, Allie, Derek, everyone on a secure video call. I played the recordings without preamble. Silence when they ended. Then Thomas spoke, his voice hushed with something like awe. "This is remarkable." Victoria admits to the theft directly, multiple times, in her own words. David added his legal assessment. Combined with the other evidence, this is airtight. She cannot claim misunderstanding or coincidence. This is confession. I sent the recordings to Rachel Morrison at Forbes within hours. Her response came quickly. "Elena, this is devastating. Her own words, her own voice. There is no spinning this." The article was updated, strengthened, made irrefutable. I reviewed the final draft one last time, every claim documented, every accusation supported, every lie exposed. 4 days until midnight, 4 days until the IPO, 4 days until the truth. December 30th, the day before everything changed. I walked through Cambridge in the winter cold, past MIT, past the coffee shops where I had dreamed of this moment for years. Bloom Botanics was valued at $2.3 billion, pending final IPO pricing. My stake was worth approximately $800 million on paper. But the money was not why I was doing this. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered, expecting a telemarketer. Silence, then breathing, then a man's voice, barely audible. I am sorry, Elena. For everything. I hope you understand why I could not do more. The line went dead before I could respond. I stared at the phone. It was him, my father. He knew what was coming, had made sure I had the weapons I needed, and now he was asking forgiveness in the only way he knew how. Quietly, anonymously, insufficiently. But something. That night, I laid out my outfit for the next day. Simple black dress, my grandmother's pearl earrings from the safe deposit box. I opened the Forbes article draft one final time and read the headline that would soon be seen by millions. The billionaire they tried to erase. How Elena Hartwell built an empire, while her family stole everything. Tomorrow the world would know. Tomorrow everything would change. In 24 hours, Victoria would understand what it felt like to be invisible, and I would finally stop being erased. December 31st, 2024. The longest day of my life. I woke early in my Beacon Hill penthouse, the apartment I had purchased 6 months earlier with Series B funding, and lay in bed watching the winter light creep across the ceiling. Everything I had worked toward, every document I had collected, every sleepless night I had endured, came down to the next 18 hours. By midnight, the world would know the truth. By midnight, I would either be vindicated or destroyed. The morning passed in a blur of final calls. Legal team confirming all documents were in order. PR team reviewing response protocols for every possible scenario. IPO bankers walking me through the mechanics of going public at midnight, an unusual timing that had raised eyebrows but ultimately been approved. Everyone was ready. The machinery was in motion. All I had to do was wait. I forced myself to eat lunch, though I tasted nothing. I forced myself to take a walk, though my legs felt like they belonged to someone else. I returned to my apartment and reviewed the Forbes article one final time, Rachel Morrison's masterpiece of investigative journalism. Every word was precise. Every accusation was documented. Every truth was ready to surface. At 6 p.m, I dressed carefully. Simple black dress, elegant but understated. My grandmother's pearl earrings, recovered from the safe deposit box, cool against my skin. I opened a bottle of wine, the same vintage Grace had served at her last birthday party, and poured myself a glass. At 6:15, Allie and Derek called to check in. "You okay?" Allie asked. "I will be. In 6 hours." Derek's voice was warm through the phone. "We are watching the IPO tracker. The whole team is. You are not alone tonight, Elena." I smiled despite everything. I know, that is the difference. As night fell, I stood at my floor-to-ceiling windows and watched Boston spread out below me. Holiday lights still twinkled on buildings. Distant celebrations echoed from the streets. Somewhere on Cape Cod, my family was gathering for their New Year's Eve party. Champagne chilling, canapes arranged, Victoria holding court in designer maternity wear while everyone admired her infant son. They had no idea what was coming. At 11:30, my phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. I recognized the pattern immediately, the same anonymous contact who had sent the recordings. But this time the message was longer. It was me. I sent the recordings. "I am sorry for everything. For my silence, my cowardice, my failure to protect you. Your grandmother would be proud of you tonight. I am too, even if I do not deserve to say it. Whatever happens next, Know that I finally chose correctly. Dad. I read the message 3 times, my eyes blurring with unexpected tears. My father, the passive bystander, the silent witness to decades of favoritism and cruelty. He had finally acted, in his own quiet, insufficient way. But he had acted. I did not respond. Not yet. There would be time for that conversation later. I thought about everyone who had brought me to this moment. Grace, who saw me and prepared for this. Thomas and David, who built the legal fortress. Ale and Derek, who believed in the vision when it was just an idea in a cramped lab. Dr. Chen, who helped me find myself again. And now, unexpectedly, my father, too little and too late. But something. 30 minutes until midnight. 30 minutes until the truth. I watched the clock on my laptop, the IPO tracker beside it showing Bloom Botanics at its final private valuation of $2.3 billion. My stake was worth approximately $850 million. At midnight, trading would begin, the company would go public, and these numbers would become real. 11:59. I held my breath. 12:00. The clock struck midnight. Fireworks exploded over Boston Harbor, visible through my windows, cascading colors reflected in the dark water. My laptop pinged. IPO live. First trades executing. Simultaneously across the internet, the Forbes embargo lifted. Rachel Morrison's article went live. The billionaire they tried to erase. How Elena Hartwell built an empire while her family stole everything. I watched the story spread in real time, refreshing social media as the shares multiplied. 10,000, 20,000, 50,000. The headline began trending within minutes. Comments poured in faster than I could read. This is the revenge story of the decade. Finally, someone exposed these trust fund frauds. The receipts are devastating. Key excerpts from the article flashed across my screen as people quoted and shared. Victoria Hartwell built V-Beauty on stolen formulas. Forged documents reveal elder abuse of grandmother Grace Hartwell. Audio recordings capture Victoria Hartwell admitting to theft and manipulation. Patent filings prove Elena Hartwell's work predates her sister's claims by 2 years. I raised my wine glass to the window, to the fireworks, to my grandmother's memory. Happy New Year, Grandma. Then my phone started ringing. Victoria called at 12:01. I let it go to voicemail. Her voice came through shaking with rage, all polish stripped away. Elena, what did you do? What the hell did you do? Dad is not breathing right. Mom is screaming. The whole family is panicking. The article, how could you? You have destroyed everything. Call me back. I saved the voicemail. Evidence for later. Marcus called at 12:03. I let it ring. His voicemail was frantic, desperate. Elena, please, we need to talk. This affects all of us. The company, the family, everything is falling apart. Please, can we just... I made mistakes, I know, but this is not... Please call me back. I deleted his message without finishing it. He did not deserve a response. My mother called at 12:05. I let it ring. Her voicemail was ice and fire, every word dripping with contempt. You ungrateful, vindictive, selfish girl. After everything this family has given you, you have humiliated us. You have destroyed your sister's reputation. Your father is having chest pains. If something happens to him, it is on your hands. I hope you are satisfied. You are no longer my daughter. I listened to the words that should have devastated me. But I felt nothing. No guilt, no regret, just peace. At 12:08, another call came through. Unknown number. I answered this one. Silence. Then my father's voice, barely a whisper. Elena, I saw the article. I saw everything. Dad, I am proud of you. He paused, his voice breaking slightly. I know that does not mean much anymore. But I am proud of you. There was a long silence. I could hear him breathing, could imagine him standing somewhere away from the chaos, making this call in secret. Your mother will never forgive this, he said quietly. But I understand. I understand why you had to. I know, Dad. Can I call you sometime? When things settle down? I closed my eyes and thought about all the years he had watched me be erased, all the times he could have spoken up and chose silence instead. But he had sent the recordings. He had finally, imperfectly, chosen me. Yeah, you can call. By 1 a.m, my phone had 47 missed calls and 212 text messages. Journalists, investors, former colleagues, strangers who had somehow found my number. The Forbes article had been shared over 100,000 times. Comments continued pouring in. Elena Hartwell is my hero. Victoria Hartwell is finished. This is justice. Beauty industry social media exploded with reactions. Influencers who had promoted V-Beauty scrambled to distance themselves, deleting posts and issuing statements. Retailers announced they were reviewing their partnerships with the V-Beauty line. Financial analysts noted that Hartwell Hospitality stock futures indicated a significant drop when markets opened on January 2nd. I scrolled through the chaos from my window seat, watching my story spread across the internet. The fireworks had ended. The city was quieting. But my truth was just beginning to travel. I expected to feel triumphant, victorious, vindicated. Instead, I felt tired and relieved, and finally seen. I did it, Grandma. The truth is out now. It cannot be buried anymore. At 3 a.m, I finally put down my phone. I was exhausted but could not sleep. I walked through my apartment, this space I had earned with my own work, filled with photographs of the people who had believed in me. On my desk sat the framed picture of Grace in her greenhouse. I added something new beside it, a printed screenshot of the Forbes headline, simple and powerful. At 3:15, I called Dr. Sarah Chen. She picked up despite the hour. Elena, I saw the article. How are you feeling? I do not know. Free, tired, scared of what comes next? All of those are valid. You did something incredibly brave tonight. It does not feel brave. It just feels finished. That is what closure feels like sometimes. Not triumph, just done. I hung up and looked out at the sleeping city. The hardest part was over. But there was still work ahead. Victoria would fight back, lawyers would call, media would demand interviews. But I had something I had never had before, the truth on my side, and the world finally listening. As dawn broke over Boston, my phone buzzed one more time. A news alert. Breaking. Hartwell Hospitality announces emergency board meeting. V-Beauty future uncertain. I smiled, set down the phone, closed my eyes, let them panic. I had waited long enough. Now it was their turn to wait. The first week of January 2025, I watched my sister's empire burn. I followed the news from my penthouse, working remotely, avoiding public appearances while the story I had unleashed spread across every platform. The Forbes article had been read by over 5 million people within 72 hours. Every major outlet picked up the story. CNN, The New York Times, Bloomberg, Vanity Fair. The narrative was irresistible. Underdog sister exposes golden child's fraud, becomes billionaire in the process. Journalists called it the revenge story of the decade. I called it the truth, finally told. January 3rd, the Massachusetts Attorney General announced an investigation into V-Beauty's business practices. January 5th, the SEC opened an inquiry into Hartwell Hospitality's financial disclosures, specifically examining whether Victoria had made false statements to investors about the origins of her botanical technology. January 7th, 3 former employees came forward with additional allegations, claiming they had witnessed Victoria taking credit for work that was not hers, that they had been pressured to sign documents they did not understand, that the company culture was built on intimidation and lies. The forged documents became the centerpiece of every investigation. Elder abuse, financial exploitation, fraud. Thomas Brennan coordinated with investigators, providing documentation that I had spent years collecting. Every timestamp, every journal entry, every recording found its way into official hands. Victoria hired a crisis PR firm and attempted damage control. She issued a statement calling the allegations false and defamatory, claiming I was motivated by jealousy and greed. But the evidence was overwhelming. The timestamps could not be disputed. The recordings were in her own voice. The forensic analysis of Grace's forged signature was conducted by 3 independent experts, who all reached the same conclusion. Every denial Victoria made only made her look more desperate. By mid-January, V beauty products were pulled from major retailers. Sephora issued a statement expressing concern. Nordstrom terminated their partnership. Influencers who had built their platforms promoting Victoria's botanical revolution scrambled to delete posts and distance themselves from the scandal. I gave one carefully controlled interview, exclusively to Rachel Morrison at Forbes. I did not gloat, I did not attack, I simply stated facts. I built my company legally, I protected my intellectual property. The evidence speaks for itself. The public response was overwhelming support. Comments flooded in from women who had experienced similar betrayals, who had been stolen from by family members, who had been gaslit into believing they were the problem. January 15th, Hartwell Hospitality held an emergency shareholder meeting. The family's luxury hotel empire, built over 4 generations, faced an existential threat. Stock price dropped 42% in 2 weeks. Board members resigned. Investors fled. Partners terminated contracts. The Hartwell name, once synonymous with old money prestige and impeccable taste, became synonymous with fraud and family betrayal. Late January, a courier arrived at my door with a thick envelope. Cream stationery, family letterhead, my mother's signature at the bottom of a formal letter. Dear Elena, as of this date, you are formally and permanently estranged from the Hartwell family. You will receive no inheritance, no acknowledgement, and no contact. You have destroyed a legacy that took 4 generations to build. I hope your billions keep you warm. Margaret Hartwell. I read the letter once, filed it with the rest of the evidence. I felt nothing. My mother had disowned me the day I was born, had chosen Victoria over me at every opportunity, had made it clear that I was only tolerated when I was useful. This letter just made it official. February brought Victoria's spiral. She stopped appearing in public. Her social media accounts went dark. Rumors circulated through industry channels. She had checked into a facility. She had fled the country. She was under house arrest awaiting charges. I did not seek information about my sister. I did not need to know. What happened to Victoria now was between her and the law. Late February, my phone rang with Victoria's number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Her voice was hollow, nothing like the polished weapon I remembered. Gone was the confident hostess, the gracious sister, the woman who had stolen everything I loved without blinking. Are you happy now? Are you satisfied? You got everything you wanted. I paused before responding. No, Victoria. I got what I earned. There is a difference. I hung up and blocked her number. March brought Marcus back into my orbit, though not in any way I welcomed. A text from a number I had deleted years ago appeared on my phone. Elena, I know I have no right to contact you, but I need to talk. I have filed for divorce. I am leaving Victoria. I made the worst mistake of my life choosing her over you. Can we meet? Please. Against my therapist's advice, I agreed to coffee. We met at a cafe in Cambridge, neutral territory, public space. Marcus looked older than I remembered, tired and diminished, nothing like the charming man who had once made me feel seen. I was an idiot, he said, leaning across the table with desperate eyes. Victoria manipulated me. She made me believe things about you that were not true. By the time I realized what she was, it was too late. By the time you realized, I said carefully, you had already married her, already helped her build an empire on my stolen work. He had no answer, just silence and guilt. I thought I loved you once, I continued, but you did not choose me when it mattered. You chose comfort, security, the easier path. I can change, he said. I have changed. Give me another chance. I stood and left cash on the table for my untouched coffee. You made a choice, Marcus. So did I. Goodbye. I walked out without looking back. April brought news that complicated everything. Thomas Brennan called with an update on the investigation, walking me through legal developments and timeline projections. At the end of the call, almost as an afterthought, he mentioned something that stopped me cold. I should mention, he said carefully, Victoria had a miscarriage. Last month, stress-related complications. I went silent. Victoria had been pregnant again. I had not even known. And now that pregnancy was gone, lost to the stress of investigations and scandal and public humiliation, I sat with this information for days. I had not caused the miscarriage. I had exposed crimes. I had told the truth. But a baby that would never exist was still a loss, even when that baby belonged to my enemy. I called Dr. Chen. Am I supposed to feel guilty? What do you feel? Complicated. Sad for the baby, not sad for Victoria. Is that wrong? Feelings are not right or wrong, Elena. They are information. What is this telling you? I thought for a long moment. That I am still human. That justice, even justified justice, has costs I did not anticipate. That sounds like wisdom to me. May brought my father back into my life, tentatively and imperfectly. Richard called me directly, his voice stronger than it had been, clearer, more present. Elena, I would like to see you, in person, if you are willing. I considered. He had sent the recordings. He had chosen me finally, even if imperfectly. Okay, but not in Boston, somewhere neutral. We met in Providence, halfway between his hotel and my apartment. A quiet restaurant, private booth, just the two of us. Richard looked older, aged by the scandal in ways that expensive suits could not hide. He had moved out of the Cape Cod mansion, separated from Margaret, living alone for the first time in 40 years. Your mother will never forgive me for sending those recordings, he said quietly. But I do not care. It was the first right thing I have done in 30 years. He told me things I had never heard, how Margaret had controlled every family decision, how he had known Victoria was cruel but was too weak to intervene, how he had watched me be sidelined and dismissed and erased, and said nothing because silence was easier than conflict. I should have protected you. I should have been your father. I was not, and I am sorry. When he finished, I spoke carefully. I cannot pretend the last 32 years did not happen. I cannot give you absolution. His eyes were wet. He nodded. But I can give you a chance. You can start being my father now, slowly, on my terms. He reached across the table. I let him take my hand. That is more than I deserve, he said. Yeah, it is. Summer brought major changes. I relocated Bloom Botanics headquarters to San Francisco, a fresh start far from the Hartwell shadow. I sold the Boston penthouse and cut my remaining ties to the East Coast. New apartment near Dolores Park. New life, new beginning. August brought the settlement. Victoria's lawyers reached out for negotiations. I refused to engage directly, letting my legal team handle everything. The final terms included full acknowledgement of my patent priority, financial restitution, return of my grandmother's emerald necklace and other stolen items, and Victoria prohibited from operating in the beauty industry for 10 years. Thomas Brennan sent me a package when it was finalized. Inside was the emerald pendant Victoria had worn at Thanksgiving, the necklace my grandmother had intended for me. I held it for a long moment, feeling its weight, remembering Grace's hands touching this same stone. Then I clasped it around my neck. It fit perfectly. 1 year ago tonight, I sat alone in a Boston penthouse, waiting for my family to realize what I had done. Tonight, I am in San Francisco, surrounded by people who actually love me, and I have never felt less alone. My apartment near Dolores Park is filled with warmth and laughter and the sound of champagne corks popping too early, because Derek has never been patient about anything. 12 friends crowd into my living room, sprawled on couches and perched on kitchen counters, arguing about which appetizers are best and whether anyone actually watches the ball drop anymore. This is what family was supposed to feel like. The space around me reflects who I have become. Warm lighting instead of cold crystal chandeliers. Photographs on the walls that I chose, not portraits arranged by interior designers to impress guests. My co-founders at the IPO celebration, all of us exhausted and triumphant. Dr. Chen at my birthday party last spring, laughing at something Ali said. My father's first visit to San Francisco, awkward but trying. Both of us learning how to be family after 32 years of not knowing how. And in the center of everything, in a place of honor on my bookshelf, a framed photograph of Grandmother Grace in her greenhouse, smiling that knowing smile, her eyes full of the love that saved me. Ali appears beside me with 2 glasses of champagne. "You are being quiet," she says. "Everything okay?" I take the glass and look around the room. Derek is demonstrating some kind of dance move that is making everyone laugh. Dr. Chen is deep in conversation with one of our engineers about the neuroscience of botanical compounds. My father stands a little awkwardly by the window, still not quite sure how to fit into my world. But here, trying. Everything is perfect, I tell Ali. And I mean it. This past year has exceeded every projection, every dream, every desperate hope I clung to during the dark years when I thought Victoria had won. Bloom Botanics is now valued at $4.7 billion, nearly double our IPO valuation. Our flagship partnership with Johns Hopkins Medical Center, a $50 million contract, is revolutionizing how hospitals think about skincare and early detection. Our AI-enhanced botanical diagnostic line can identify early warning signs of certain skin conditions while treating them, technology that did not exist before we created it. Industry publications have named me Entrepreneur of the Year. I have been featured in magazines I used to read in waiting rooms, wondering if I would ever matter enough to be included. But the awards gather dust on a shelf I rarely look at. The work matters more than the accolades. What matters is that I wake up every morning as myself. No performance, no pretending. No waiting for approval that was never coming. In June, at the Johns Hopkins partnership announcement, a journalist asked me a question I have thought about ever since. Does this success vindicate your decision to expose your family? I answered honestly, and I still believe every word. I did not expose them for vindication. I exposed them because silence was costing me my integrity. The success is not proof that I was right. The evidence was proof. The success is just what happens when you finally stop shrinking. Victoria's fate filtered through to me in fragments over the past year, though I stopped actively following her story months ago. V Beauty dissolved completely, the brand erased from the market as if it had never existed. Criminal investigations continue, with charges likely but not yet filed. She reportedly lives in a small rental now, far from Greenwich, far from the privilege she was born into and believed she deserved. The golden child, tarnished beyond repair. I feel no satisfaction in her downfall, just distance, and something that might be pity if I let myself examine it too closely. My mother has never reached out, not once in 12 months. I stopped expecting her to around March when I finally accepted that some people choose pride over love until their last breath. Margaret chose Victoria. She will live with that choice, and I have made peace with having no mother. I had Grace. That was enough. My father calls every Sunday. We talk for exactly 30 minutes, sometimes awkward, sometimes painful, always real. He asks about my work, my friends, my life, things he never thought to ask before. He is learning to be a father at 68 years old. Late, but not never. We are not close yet, but we are closer than we have ever been. Some relationships cannot be rebuilt from the ruins, but some can be started over, one careful conversation at a time. I touch the emerald pendant at my throat, my grandmother's necklace, recovered in the settlement. I wear it every important day, the Johns Hopkins signing, my birthday, tonight. It has become my talisman, My connection to the woman who saw me first, who loved me without conditions, who prepared for this moment even as she lay dying. Sometimes I imagine what Grace would say about all of this. The company built on our shared knowledge. The truth finally told. The family fractured but me whole. I think she would smile that knowing smile and say exactly what I need to hear. You did good, sweetheart. You did exactly what I knew you would. I have plans for the coming year that would make her proud. I am purchasing land in Napa Valley to build a botanical research garden, open to the public, with educational programs for young women in science. It will be named after her. The Grace Hartwell Botanical Institute. My grandmother gave me roots when my family tried to make me disappear. Now I am planting roots for others. At 11:55, someone turns on the television. The countdown coverage fills the screen, Times Square packed with strangers celebrating the end of another year. My guests quiet down, gathering near the windows and the TV, champagne glasses raised and ready. Dr. Chen appears beside me, her voice soft. How are you feeling? 1 year since everything changed. I think about the question honestly. Free, tired sometimes, grateful, still healing, but free. That is what growth sounds like, she says. I keep waiting to feel triumphant, victorious. I do not. What do you feel instead? Peaceful, like I finally stopped fighting for permission to exist. Dr. Chen smiles. That is not victory, Elena. That is something better. That is home. The countdown begins. 10, 9, 8. Ally grabs my hand on one side. Derek takes the other. My father raises his glass from across the room, his eyes wet, his smile uncertain but genuine. 3, 2, 1. Cheers erupt, champagne spills. Hugs happen everywhere at once. Fireworks explode over San Francisco, different from Boston but just as beautiful, lighting up a different coast, a different life, the same sky. I look around at the faces of people who chose me, who saw me when I was invisible, who believed in my work when my own family called it worthless. And finally, after 33 years, I believe I deserved to be chosen. Later, after the guests have gone home, I sit alone in my quiet apartment. Not lonely, just alone with my thoughts, my grandmother's necklace warm against my skin. I open my laptop and begin to write. 1 year ago, I was alone on New Year's Eve. Tonight, I was surrounded by people who see me. Not the version my family wanted, the version I actually am. Healing did not mean reconciliation. It meant accepting that I deserved better and building a life that reflected that. I did not lose my family. They lost me the moment they chose reputation over relationship, when they decided my work did not matter, when they tried to erase me rather than celebrate me. I just finally stopped letting them. So, if you have made it this far, thank you for listening. A lot of people have asked me, do you regret it? Was it worth losing your family? Here is the truth. I did not lose my family. They lost me. And yes, it was worth it. Because the alternative was disappearing. You do not owe anyone, not even family, the right to make you invisible. Your voice matters, your work matters, you matter. And if they cannot see that, build a life with people who can. If you are sitting on work someone is trying to claim, document it, protect it, file the patents, save the emails, build a paper trail that speaks louder than their lies. If you are being told you are too much or not enough, find people who see you. They are out there, I promise. If you have to choose between keeping the peace and keeping your integrity, choose integrity. Every single time. This is my story. What is yours? If this story meant something to you, if it made you feel seen or gave you courage, or just reminded you that you are not alone, I would love to hear from you. Hit that subscribe button so you do not miss the next story. Leave a like if Elena's journey resonated with you. And in the comments, tell me, have you ever had to choose between family peace and your own truth? What did you do? I read every single comment. Check the description below for resources on protecting your intellectual property, setting boundaries with toxic family, and finding support when you need it most. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for staying until the end. See you in the next one. This story